Aloha. Hi everyone, welcome and thank you for being here with me. It is the 30th of November 2024. I am sharing from the foothills of Northern California, USA. And what's coming up today to share is a continuation of grief. I had this aha sort of experience earlier about the grieving I have been doing recently. And actually, since the last video that I made where I shared the grief ceremony that came to me through an ancestor, I haven't been grieving in the same way. What do I mean by that? I haven't been crying and releasing and expressing grief through tears and emotion. And I'm gonna sit to share this. So something that I really became aware of today about my grief had to do with my pregnancy this year. So if you're just tuning in and getting to know me, excuse me, I'm called Shell. Please take only what resonates and discard the rest. So earlier this year, in the month of May and ending in June, I was pregnant, my second pregnancy of my life. And I was actually pregnant at the same time that my son was expecting his first child. So it was really an exciting time for me. I was like, wow, I'm going to be grandma and second time mother simultaneously. And wow, I just kind of had like heart explosion joy. Really just so honored that I was going to be having these multi realities simultaneously. And so when my pregnancy completed early at 6 weeks in June, I really just nurtured myself through grief. I grieved in all the ways I needed to. I cried a lot and I just let myself feel completely everything that came up in my grief. And I thought my grief process was complete. And when my grandson arrived, the conditions of his arrival, being in a hospital environment and the circumstances around that, I left the hospital in grief. In grief for my lineage, for my grandson who was taken from his mother and spent his first 48 hours not held by his mother, but instead in a separate unit of the hospital. And I was aware of a birth pattern that, had been passed down from my grandmother to my mother to me to my son Deshaun and then to his son. And so I was grieving on so many different levels, and some I didn't even understand at the time. And so what I realized, what came into my awareness today, was this realization that since my pregnancy completion, since my pregnancy completed early in June, I still had this really, really, really powerfully strong want, desire. Like, to me, it felt like a calling to procreate again. And this time in a state of purity. Because after, I don't want to call it, I know traditionally, or not traditionally, but for a long time we've called it a miscarriage. But to me, there was nothing miss about my carriage, like being a conduit, being a vessel of divine love growing inside of me. Like, so I'm just gonna refer to it as pregnancy completion. So when my pregnancy completed, I still had this, I didn't think of myself as like holding on and not letting go of and releasing, but I realized I was still holding on to that pregnancy, even though I thought with my head that I grieved it. But it was like every month after that, I was really careful, like during the times that I could, become pregnant again. And then after that, it was like being so mindful of any herbal tea I drank and all the things, like wanting to be this pure vessel to create the conditions for life to be growing inside of me again. And I didn't consider that as a holding on to until today. And I was asking, like, checking in with my inner self, my heart, like, why is it suddenly, like in the last 7 sunrises, or however long it's been since that grief ceremony I went through very recently, since then, this like strong calling to procreate again, to have the experience of pregnancy and birthing and breastfeeding and nurturing and raising another child. And it released from me, and it, without even full realization that it was happening, I released it in a way of just knowing that it will happen if it's God's will, if it's Source's will, that is something I am given the honor to experience again, then I will. And it was like, done. No more like, I'm wanting it to happen, I've been waiting for it to happen, I've been calling this in for 5 years and all this. It was just like, free. And so I share this because when I was invited to have this grief ceremony and release from my womb what was being stored and held, that needed to be grieved and released from my womb, it created this space for me to just be. And like another layer removed, another layer exposing more of my heart, knowing that there's a beautiful dance between having the intention, building the architecture, building the blueprint in the higher realms, and then just relaxing and playing and letting it come into creation, to be co-created into matter, into physical form. And so, yes, I mean, wow. It was a really big aha for me today that, wow, this monthly emotional almost roller coaster I was experiencing of like, oh, my period's here again. Like, and shifting now into like, oh, well, yeah, when it's absolutely right, we will together, my beloved partner and I will call in the soul that is inviting us to be its parent. And so, yes, just sharing that sometimes even when we go through these big grief ceremonies, that the integration that follows happens at its own natural pace. And the turtle has been showing up in my art recently. I keep making turtles, and then turtle showed up in my meditation and was like, okay, I'm sharing with you a little of my own wisdom about pace. Think about the pace of a tortoise, of a turtle, and with that comes longevity. So yeah, that's my share for today. My big aha about realizing this holding on I was, keeping with me, keeping in my womb, holding in my womb, that really was ready to be released, to become a clear vessel for life force energy and not a life that was. And so thank you for being with me today and for spending this time with me to witness my share, witness me. And I really appreciate you, and thank you again for being here. Mahalo.